Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Rafael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Rafael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Ken, good morning. Thank you so much for being on Coaching Call. How are you?
Good morning, Sifu. I'm doing great, and thank you for having me as your guest.
Oh my gosh, it's such a pleasure. I got to tell you, I am thrilled to have you on. I'm excited because I get to know you even more. And what an incredible time we've had every time that we've been in front of each other. I am just blessed to know you. Let's start with you. Where were you born? So I got two questions for you. Where were you born, and who influenced you before the age of 10?
Okay. I was born on Long Island
Mm.
at a hospital in Mineola. And when I was born, it was in 1950. And we had just moved, I guess, 2 years earlier to Levittown. My father had fought in the war, and when he came back, he married my mother in 1947. And moved our family to Levittown on Long Island. And I have an older brother, Steve, who was born in 1948. So he's 2 years older than me. And we had a very nice small house in Levittown.
Yeah. I've been to all those neighborhoods. So who would you say was your biggest influence that you can recall? 10, 12, 15 even years old that really still sticks with you today?
Oh, it was definitely my grandparents. I was really blessed to have wonderful, wonderful grandparents. And just to tell you a little bit more why they were such a big influence, I was born, as I said, in 1950, which happened to be during the polio epidemic. And unfortunately, less than a month after I was born, my mother and brother contracted polio.
Mm.
And my mother died when I was less than 1 month old.
Oh my.
My brother fortunately recovered fully and became a terrific athlete. So he was very fortunate. But after my mother died, we moved in with my paternal grandparents, my father's parents, for 5 years, close to 5 years. And my maternal grandparents used to visit every day to help with our care. So I grew up being very, very close with both sets of grandparents. And I would say, obviously, my father and brother were major influences, but my grandparents in particular had a very special relationship with me and influence on me.
Wow. It's incredible. 1 month and your mom was taken from you.
Right.
I also had polio. I contracted it when I was 3. I survived it. I had to learn how to walk again. And so I've been an athlete my whole life as well, like your brother.
Right. And, when I think about that time, I think about, my poor family, but my father in particular. Here, he had come back from the war just a few years earlier. And lo and behold, he marries my mother, seems to be having a very happy life. And suddenly she dies. My brother has polio. And here he's only 28 years old at this time.
Mm.
And this was his situation. But we were fortunate. We had tremendous family support. And my grandparents were just incredible.
Yes. Wow. Like you said, it had to be devastating for your dad, but the fact that his parents were there to support, and your mom's parents were there to support. Incredible story. And do you recall how long it took for your brother to recover?
I think it was a few months. I think it was more than 6 months.
Mm,
And I know, it took a while and seemed to be mostly confined to one leg that he was severely limited with. But not only did he totally recover, as I indicated, became a terrific athlete and was a big influence in my life as he continues to be.
right. Beautiful, beautiful.
Mm.
So your grandparents impacted you, and how was schooling for you?
Well, when I started school, I started kindergarten when I was 5. We had just moved to Oceanside. My
Mm,
father remarried and we were now living in Oceanside, and it had just started, and it was very strange to suddenly be living away from my grandparents in a new house in a new community, suddenly going to school and finding one that I was enjoying it. I liked school very much at that time. I
mhm,
had a lot of good friends growing up who, within 2 blocks of where I was living, there were about 10 boys close to my age. So it was a wonderful place to grow up. And school was a great place not only to socialize with my friends, but to play sports.
mm.
We'd get together in the playground and play a lot outside.
Yeah. You're one of the few people who, like myself, like school. I know so many people who hated school, but I enjoyed school actually, just like you, because it was a great place to get information, to learn, right, about
Right.
the world.
Absolutely, and I particularly enjoyed math. For some
Mm,
reason, math was my favorite subject. It just seemed to come naturally with me, and I
mm,
can remember visiting with my grandparents and constantly asking my grandfather just to give me math problems. I
mm.
loved just doing math problems as a hobby.
Yeah, my gosh, you and I have so much in common. I love math so much that when I had my own kids in the car ride, I would give them multiplication tables when they were like 2 or 3 and ask them and have them learn the multiplication tables so that they would get good at math. Um, I don't wanna make it about me, but it's my son, uh, in 2nd grade was able to recite pi for his teacher, and she was shocked. She was like, "Who how on earth, as a 2nd grader, do you know pi?" Right? And he goes, "My dad."
Right.
So it was kind of funny. So Ken, you liked school, you went through sports. What was one of your favorite sports, growing up?
Oh, well, I loved football in particular.
Mm,
I started playing Little League football. I think I was still 6 years old, had just turned 7.
mm,
And I played Little League football, as did my brother, and just loved it. And
mm.
of course, that same year, I played Little League baseball. And where we lived, we turned basically every piece of property into an athletic field for us. We played touch football on the street in front of our house,
Right.
played wiffle ball in our driveway.
Mm.
We put up a basketball net on the telephone pole, played basketball there. We played jai alai on the wall next to our house.
Wow.
We made our backyard into a miniature golf course. Everything we did revolved around sports.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, did you played when you were 6 and 7. Did that carry into when you went into, middle school?
Absolutely. In middle school, we called it junior high school, and it was from 7th to ninth grade.
Right.
And I played, there was 3 different sports during the year, fall, winter, and spring. And I participated on a sports team 8 out of those 9
Mm,
opportunities. So in middle school, I also wrestled, and I loved wrestling. I started wrestling in the 8th grade and wrestled all the way through high school. So I wrestled for 5 years.
mm.
And football, I was on the football team 8th and ninth, and, in high school. In fact, in ninth grade, I was the quarterback and captain of the football team and
Wow.
co-captain of the wrestling team, played on the baseball team, and we had a sports night at the end of the year. I was one of the co-captains.
So you did nothing, basically.
We go to sports morning, noon, and night, Sifu.
I can
That was my
see
life.
that. You have such drive. I can see why you are who you are today because of that drive that you have. Because one sport was not enough. You had to excel at all of them. I love that.
I loved it, and if anybody would have asked me to describe myself back then, I would have talked about playing football, wrestling,
Mm,
baseball, virtually every activity, and then almost as an afterthought, I would say, and I was also a pretty good student.
mm. There you go. Love it, love it. So you use not only your body, but you used your mind. I love that aspect because now you're fully engaged in life, if you will, right?
Very much.
Um, so, talk to me about high school. What were some of the highlights, if you will?
Well, as I indicated, I started, or at least I told you, I started on the varsity wrestling team,
Mhm.
started on the varsity football team, and I just love being involved in athletics. It was just great. And when I wasn't on a team, I was playing softball or baseball. I was
Mm,
involved in 3 different softball leagues.
mm,
And starting after my junior year in high school, I worked during the summers as a lifeguard. So
uh,
everything involved revolved around physical fitness. I had my own set of weights at home and used to
mm.
lift weights. And, whenever I thought of myself back then, it was always being very active doing some type of sports.
Wow, incredible, incredible. I don't know if I could have competed against you back then.
You know, I was actually relatively small. I'm just under 5'8".
Mm,
So it seemed like everybody that I was competing against was bigger, stronger, and faster than I was. And I loved that challenge.
mm.
Great.
Yeah, yeah. That's incredible.
Mhm.
Um, so what was the name of your high school?
It was Oceanside High School.
Okay.
It was a large high school. We had, I believe, 800 people just in my class alone and, my graduating class. But, I grew up in Oceanside. I had a lot of good friends.
Mm,
Most of them revolved around sports.
mm. Yeah, look at that. I almost opened up a martial arts school in Oceanside, and, when I was gonna sign the lease, I went for the meeting, but the facade fell off.
Uh,
And on Ocean Avenue, and I was like, "Wait a minute." I said, "I'm not signing this." "Oh, no, sign it. You'll be fine. You'll be fine." I'm like, no." I said, "Until the facade comes back on." And I found out it took them 2 years to be able to get all the because
well,
people almost got hit with the facade when it was coming down.
Well, I
So,
moved to
yeah.
Oceanside in 1955, and it
Wow.
was a new community, and they were just building there. It had been like
Mm,
marshland.
mm,
And, our house, we were the first to live in our house. And I remember seeing it as it was being built. And they were building one house after another on our street, and then the next street. A wonderful place to grow up. And I
mm.
think when most people used to think of Oceanside back then, the first thing would come to mind was Nathan's, right?
Oh, yes, I remember Nathan's.
And that was a big attraction being near Nathan's,
Yeah, yeah, and Waffle House. I mean, later on came Waffle House, right?
right?
Great places, to visit and be at. Um, because I lived in Long Beach, and in order to get yeah, I used to have to come through Oceanside to, get to Long Beach. Great communities, great place, like you said, to grow up, and even now to, have children and great schools and so forth. Talk to us about your choice in college.
Okay, well, I ended up going to Cornell University,
Mhm.
and I studied engineering. I was in the College of Engineering at Cornell. How did I choose Cornell? My brother really, really wanted to go there and didn't get accepted,
Ooh, look at
unfortunately.
that.
But he used to talk about Cornell, and he had visited it and really, really wanted to go there.
Mm,
That's why I applied to Cornell. And in fact, his best friend at the time did get into Cornell and was going to Cornell. So for me, it just, my father, mother, and brother went to the University of Vermont.
mm,
So growing up, I always thought, I'll probably go to the University of Vermont, but since my brother wanted to go to Cornell, I obliged. And in fact, um, when I was accepted to Cornell, I was still considering going to the University of Vermont.
Mm.
And when I went up there once again, just to look at the school one last time, I was staying at my brother's fraternity, and all his roommates were basically saying they all wanted to go to Cornell and didn't get in. What am I doing up in Vermont? And there was a combination of people that said you definitely should go to Cornell, and that's where I chose.
Oh, there you go. See, it was in your cards, right?
Right.
It was in your cards. So let's lead up to what has happened to your life, what that really challenged you in so many different ways, that transformed who you've become.
Well, I decided through my guidance counselor's advice to study engineering because I was very good at math.
Mm,
He said you should really go into engineering.
right.
Now, I didn't know much about engineering, but I took his advice, applied to the College of Engineering, and was accepted. And I found it wasn't just math, it was a lot of science.
Mm,
And while I was good in science in high school, I had trouble with it in college. And I knew that because I had to devote my time to my studies, I did not play a sport my freshman year in college. And I really, really missed it. Here I was studying all day long and struggling with my study
mm,
and just missed that outlet of playing sports. And then I decided during that summer after freshman year, I just have to play a sport just for my own sanity, my own
right,
well-being.
right. Yeah.
So then the question was, should I play football or wrestle? Because I loved them both. So I decided, the easiest way to make that decision is I'll do them both. I'll first play football and then do wrestling because they were in different, months of the year.
Mm,
And Cornell in particular had a special football team. They were in a special league called lightweight football, or back then it was called 150-pound football,
mm,
which for me was ideal. To play in that league, you had to weigh 154 or less 2 days before the game. Now, most of the people playing in that sport weighed a lot more than that and used to lose weight to make weight. And by game time, it gained back another 10 or 15 pounds. I was still one of the smallest people on the team. I
mm.
was naturally under the weight. So I figured this is ideal for me to play in a 150-pound team. So I went out during my sophomore year, played on the team, and by then I was so far behind in my studies, I just couldn't wrestle. But I
Really?
decided to stick with football the next year.
Mm. So wrestling was out, football was in 100. I never heard of that. 150-pound league.
They've since increased the weight to 172, and it's now called sprint football.
Look at that. Look at that. So, what position did you play?
All right. Well, in high school, I was actually a defensive end. I was
Mm.
the smallest defensive end in the league. I weighed in high school just under 150 pounds. The person next to me weighed 220,
Oh, wow.
and most of the people I played against were a lot bigger than me.
Right.
In college, I was a linebacker. But my sophomore year in college, everybody was just so good on our team,
Mm,
so fast. I didn't get to play much
mm,
during my sophomore year. So during my junior year, I worked out the summer before really intensely, running in the sand at the beach virtually
mm,
every day and tried to get in the best shape I could be in. So at the beginning of my junior year, I thought I had a good opportunity to perhaps be a starter on the team.
mm.
Didn't work out that way, but that's what I was really looking forward to.
Why didn't it work out that way?
Well, as it turned out, our first game of the season happened to be on the Jewish holiday Yom Kippur,
Mm,
which while I'm not very religious, I did always observe the Jewish high holidays of Rosh Hashanah and
mm,
Yom Kippur. And I told the coach right at the beginning of the season, I won't be able to play in that first game. So as a result, throughout all of the preseason, in the beginning, I was not practicing with the first string. But as it turned out, one of our players was injured before the game in practice. The coach asked me if I could play and observe the holiday on another day.
Mm.
And of course, I couldn't. That wouldn't have been appropriate, but I felt terrible that I missed the first game. The second game of the year, I was again supposed to start. And unfortunately, right before the game, a few days before, one of my grandfathers died
Mm.
unexpectedly from a heart attack. So of course, I went home for the funeral, returned to school before the third game. And by then, our team had won the first two games. They stuck with the same lineup, and I was a substitute.
Right.
And I only got in for, I believe it was uh, maybe 4 plays, 5 plays in that game.
Mm.
So now the fourth game of this season was on October 31st, 1970, Halloween.
Halloween. Look at that.
I have to tell you, growing up, Halloween was my favorite day of the year. I
Mm.
mean, what could be better than going out with a group of friends, trick
Yeah.
or treating all afternoon and night,
Mm.
getting bags and bags loads of candy and chocolate, and my favorite day of the year. So here it is. Halloween is going to be our fourth game of the year. And I was only going to be a substitute, but I was in on the punt return team and the first substitute, as a defensive linebacker. And just to tell you a little bit more about that, our school was actually uh, in recession at that time, vacation, because it was shortly before the election.
Mm.
And the school had something called citizenship recess, where they encouraged the students to go home and candidate, you know, um, electioneer for their candidates. But I was still up at school because I was playing football.
Right.
And so the night before our game on Halloween, very few people were still up at Cornell.
Mm.
So a few of my football teammates and I all got together and we went to a friend's cabin to spend the evening at. And we went shopping at the local IGA food store
Mm.
for food. And we get back to the cabin and the question suddenly comes up, who knows how to cook? Never occurred to us before we bought all the food. So I had done some cooking in the past. I volunteered and I put in the steaks. I turn the oven on to broil and I check on the meat 5 or 6 minutes later and the oven isn't heating up.
Mm.
And I call in my friend and I say, Bob, there's something wrong with the oven. It isn't heating up. And Bob says, well, you lit the pilot light, right? And I'm like, what's a pilot light? I had never cooked on a gas stove before. And
Oh
he
my.
starts laughing at me. You say you can cook and you never, you don't know what a pilot light is. And I didn't know, but
Mm.
he's laughing at me and he goes over and lights it. And here the cabin had been filling up with gas.
Mm.
Suddenly there was a big explosion.
Wow.
The gas that had been coming out of the stove exploded. There was a loud boom, a big flash of light. And I looked down to see if I was hurt. Incredibly, I wasn't injured.
Ah.
Nothing had happened. And I can remember lying in bed that night thinking how lucky I was.
Right.
For I remember thinking, if I can survive an explosion like that
Mm.
without being injured, nothing can happen to me.
Right.
I must be invincible.
Wow.
And it was the next day that I broke my neck.
Oh my goodness.
Next day
Yeah. On Halloween.
on Halloween. And I might add, Sifu, what made it even stranger was at the beginning of the season, I actually had a premonition that I was going to be hurt that year.
Really?
I don't know why. It was tough for me to explain. Here I had played Little League football for 5 years, 2 years of junior high school football, 2 years of high school football, 2 years of college football. I never had that feeling before. And it
Mm.
was such a strong feeling that I actually verbalized it. I told my roommate at the beginning of the season, I don't know what it is. I just have this feeling I'm going to get hurt this year.
Mm.
He said, well, what do you mean? I said, I don't know. I just have this feeling. And I broke my neck the first tackle that I made that year.
Wow. So how was the incident? How
Well,
did it occur?
it actually occurred on a kickoff, which I normally wouldn't have been in on the kickoff squad. But on the first play of the game, on the kickoff, one of our players was injured. He got a concussion.
Mm.
And as a result, I was then put in on the kickoff squad to take his place. And it was still in the first quarter. We had just scored another touchdown. We were leading 16-0. And on the kickoff, I ran down the field. Somebody tried to block me, and I was able to sidestep them and avoid it. I had a clear shot at the ball carrier. I ran in, make the tackle, and suddenly I felt this electric shock shoot through my body.
Mm,
Know what it was. I immediately lost all movement and all sensation other than, the shock in my neck. I lost all sensation below my shoulders.
mm,
And I was lying on the field and nobody knew I was injured. The ref even ran up to me, said, "Great tackle, son." The team's changed field, so a kickoff squad left. The defense came on the field, and I had to call out to somebody, "I can't move."
mm.
Didn't know what it was. And suddenly, there were a group of people, crowding around me, and there had to be a couple of doctors at the game, um, but no ambulance.
Right.
They didn't have an ambulance at the game, and they decided they'd put me on a stretcher and move me off the field to wait for the ambulance and allow the game to continue. And the strangest feeling, Sifu, is when they lifted up the stretcher and it felt like they were just carrying my head off the field and
Uh,
left my body behind because I had no feeling at all below my shoulders back then.
mm.
So it felt like they were just carrying my head off the field.
What an incredible feeling that must have been. What was going through your head? Was it fear? Was it worried? Was it what on earth is happening?
I had no idea what was happening. I had never heard of a spinal cord injury before.
Mm,
So, and obviously what happened was not only did I break my neck, but I severely damaged my spinal cord. Well, I had never heard of that. I heard of something called a pinched nerve,
right.
which I wasn't sure what that was, but I thought maybe it was just a shock of the tackle. Maybe I pinched a nerve and, within seconds and at the latest minutes, my movement would return. And I remember lying on the side of the field, um, and speaking to a doctor. There was a team doctor there, and I remember saying, "Doctor, I'll be able to move again soon, right? Won't I?" And he said, "I don't know."
Mm,
And that really shook me up. And as it turned out, it was raining at the time too. In
mm,
football, you play in the rain as well.
yeah.
And I'm laying there face up in the rain, and having no idea why I couldn't move and what was taking so long for me to get my movement back. And then for the doctor to say he wasn't sure if I'd ever move again. I just couldn't believe it.
Right. Yeah. How was the ride to the hospital?
Boy, that was brutal. First of all, once they took me off the field, they realized how severe the injury was, and they said, "Don't touch him, don't do anything for him." And I remember I was lying there, my shoulder pads had ridden up and was digging into my neck where I'd broken
Mm,
my neck. And, I was asking people, can they adjust me? And they said, "No, we can't move you at all." And I remember I had to convince somebody just to take out my mouthpiece so I wouldn't choke on it.
mm,
And when they put me in an ambulance, one of my friends who happened to be a spectator at the game rode with me. And I remember I'm lying in the back and somebody's actually holding my head to keep it stable as we're riding in the ambulance. And we get to the hospital in Ithaca. They do x-rays. They cut off my uniform. They see it's a very severe injury that they were not equipped to treat.
mm.
So they had to put me back in the ambulance and drive me an hour away to Elmira to be treated at a hospital there. And when they were cutting off my uniform in Ithaca, they had a lot of trouble getting off my helmet.
Right.
I was wearing a very tight helmet with a big birdcage face mask, and it was very difficult to pull it off without moving my neck at all,
Right.
which could have been fatal from what I heard.
Mm.
So they had about 3 or 4 people holding my neck and trying to gradually take off the helmet, which took quite a while.
Oh wow. Were you in pain during this time?
I was in a lot of pain, and I asked the doctors if they could give me something for the pain, and they said, "No, we have to keep you in full control of your senses till you get to the hospital in Elmira to tell the doctor what you were experiencing.
Mm.
So I was in a lot of pain during that time. Excuse me, can you just give me a drink, please?
So Madeline Eller, my cousin, my hero cousin continues to aspire. XOXO. So thank you. Yes, I know that
It's my
Ken is a
cousin.
hero for sure.
Thank you, Madeline. Mm.
Yes, yes. So it took 3 to 4 people to eventually take the helmet off. Where were you going? What was going through your mind at this?
Well, again, they didn't tell me what was wrong with me.
Mm,
At some point during that time, I learned that my neck was broken, but nobody mentioned a spinal cord injury. So I figured, well, once my neck heals, I'll be back up and around. I didn't know how long that would take. Excuse me, but I figured that was the problem, a broken neck. And when I got to the hospital in Elmira, they put me in traction. They actually drilled holes in my skull and put me in traction where they had 20 pounds of weights hanging from this traction on my neck, pulling my head straight back.
mm,
And nobody again explained to me what had happened.
right.
Nobody told me I had injured my spinal cord.
Mm. When did you find that out?
You know, so at some point, I was in this hospital in Elmira for 4 weeks before they moved me to a hospital down to Oceanside. They moved me by ambulance.
Right.
But while I was in Elmira, I learned that about a spinal cord injury, and that often after a spinal cord injury, you go through a period of what's called spinal shock, which I was told could last anywhere from a very short period of time to even 6 months, maybe a year.
Mm,
So I figured I'm in some type of spinal shock. And once that wears off, I'll get my movement back.
right.
And of course, that never happened.
Mm.
Just give me another drink, please.
So for those of you who are watching, that is not Ken's hen. That's his beautiful wife, Anna,
Right.
who is there. And we're going to get into how you guys met and all that good stuff. Um, but Anna is truly his support. She does everything for him because he cannot move from his neck down, shoulders down, right?
Right. Yeah. I injured my neck between the fourth and fifth cervical in the neck, which is very high up. They say if you injured your neck one level higher, that I probably would not have been able to breathe.
Mm,
And if I did survive, I would have been on a respirator.
right.
So when I was injured, the doctors didn't think I would live through the week.
Mm,
They told my family that I probably wouldn't live through the week.
wow, incredible. And here you are.
Hmm.
Here you are.
55 years later.
A
In
young
fact, the
a
doctor,
young 75-year-old.
right, the doctors actually told my family that if I were to survive, I would have no movement. I would not be able to do anything. I'd probably live the rest of my life in a nursing home. And they actually said to my family, if he were my son, I would just let him go.
Wow.
That's what they told my family.
Wow. So here's your dad lost his wife when you were 1 month old. His other son, who's 2 years older than you, who's about to, gets polio, is going through all this. Later on, how old were you when this accident happened?
I was 20, and I might add, my grandfather had died just 17 days before my injury.
Ooh.
So my poor father was, living with the fact that his father had just died unexpectedly.
Mm.
And suddenly I have the spinal cord injury. So it had to be devastating
Oh
for him.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
When we think about the life is so precious, and you know that because of all that you've gone through, right? All you've done so much, in such little time before that injury, but you've done so much more since. Um, you were brought back down to Long Island, right? 4 weeks after the injury, right?
Right.
And how long did you spend in the next hospital?
Well, I was in that hospital from November 28th up until March 1st.
Mm,
And then I was moved to a rehab center in New York City called the Rusk Institute. That was, they referred it to the Rusk Institute. It was named after it's the head of the hospital, Dr. Howard Rusk. Now, he was very famous in the field of rehabilitation. That was supposed to be the best hospital in the world for rehabilitation. In fact, that's where Joseph Kennedy was
mm,
being a patient at following his stroke. Joseph Kennedy, the father of President John Kennedy,
right.
did his rehabilitation at the Rusk Institute because that was supposed to be the best in the world.
Mm,
So I was moved to that hospital by ambulance, and I was put in a room with three other individuals who had spinal cord injuries, who were all injured before me, for a period of time before me. And all of them had more movement than I did. Some of them had been hurt actually for a few years.
mm,
And I mean, it was very depressing just being surrounded by
right.
other individuals who were dealing with their own disabilities. But it was also very depressing because they didn't seem to be doing anything with their lives. Most of them who had been hurt for years were basically just sitting at home watching television.
Mm,
And I believe probably part of that fault was with the medical professionals.
right.
They didn't seem to be encouraging people very much, that there was still a lot people could do.
Right.
And I kept asking questions about my injury and my prognosis, and they seemed reluctant to answer them.
Mm,
And finally, somebody showed me a pamphlet put out by the Rusk Institute. And of course, I need somebody to turn the pages for me because I couldn't do it on my own. And they had a page about, depending on what level in your neck you're hurt, I was hurt between the fourth and fifth cervical, how that would affect your bodily functions, how it would affect your lungs, your breathing,
mm,
your bladder, your bowels.
right.
It was right on point with my injury between
Mm,
the fourth and fifth cervical. And they had a page about what type of movement you'd be able to do with that type of injury. Whether you'd have a little bit of biceps, but no triceps. And
right.
it just was exactly describing me. I was amazed how accurate it was.
Mm,
And then they had a page about what type of jobs or careers you could go into. And the only thing I saw for my injury would be to someday sell magazine subscriptions over the telephone.
oh,
And I was devastated. Here
yeah.
I had been studying engineering at one of the most prestigious schools in the country, and suddenly they seem to think the best I'll ever be able to do would be to sell magazine subscriptions over the telephone.
Mm, mm, mm,
And when I started to think about it, I was like, well, wait a minute. I can't even dial a telephone.
right.
Rotary phones back then, not even touch tones. I
Mm,
couldn't write or take notes. And I remember lying in bed thinking, I'm not even going to be able to do that.
mm,
And I was devastated. Oh, Sifu, I don't think you could have been more depressed than
mm.
I was during that first year after my injury.
You had a lot of time, obviously, to think about your life.
Mm.
Did you get into why me episodes?
I certainly did.
Mm,
I thought about everything that could have happened and why it happened.
right.
And while I was in the hospital, I was visited by so many different members of the clergy from all religions.
Mm,
That wasn't just rabbis.
right.
People from all religions were visiting me. And they would come in and ask, how am I doing? And I remember saying, terrible. Can you tell me
Mm,
why I got hurt? You seem to have a special relationship with God. Why did I get hurt?
right.
I was a good person. I didn't think I had done anything wrong. In fact, I didn't even play in a game because it was on Yom Kippur.
Right.
Why did I get hurt?
You did everything right.
That's what I thought. And just about everyone, no matter what religion they were, would basically give me the same answer. Nobody knows the ways of God, or God
Mhm.
works in mysterious ways, but we're sure he has a plan for you. And that didn't bring me much comfort at all.
No, of course not.
So I was very, very down on religion, and just thinking about the future just seemed so hopeless. But see, for I was surrounded by such a loving family
Mm.
with, not just grandparents, well, at least one set of grandparents. My other grandparents had already died. My paternal grandparents had died, but my maternal grandparents were there. But aunts, uncles, cousins, as well
Mm.
as my brother, sister, father, everybody was around trying to help me.
Mm.
And they kept reassuring me that there was a lot I could still do. And they basically told me they'd act as my arms and legs if need be, to make
Wow.
sure I could still do everything I wanted to do in my life.
Mm.
So I was fortunate. I had one special duty nurse when I was in the hospital at Oceanside by the name of Barbara Crook, who became a tremendous friend and area of support that helped me in so many ways. And while I was in the hospital at Rusk, there was a vocational counselor named Joyce Mesh who encouraged me to go back to school,
Mm.
which seemed, school. I mean, the only thing I wanted to think about was school at this point.
Right.
But she encouraged me to go back to school and helped me get back to school.
Did you go back to Cornell?
I did against just about everybody's advice. Excuse me, Cornell. One, I had trouble studying there before I was injured in
Right.
engineering. But two, Cornell's on a very hilly terrain. It's in
Mm.
upstate New York in Ithaca. The winters are long, cold, and a lot of snow. Um,
Right.
there's a lot of steps. There were no ramps or curb cuts back then. I mean, this was 20 years before the Americans with Disabilities Act. So just getting around at Cornell was really, really difficult.
Mhm.
They never had a student like me go up there. There was no other quadriplegics that ever went to Cornell before.
Right.
I actually had an offer from Columbia, the school I was hurt against, to go back to school at Columbia. And I remember thinking, gee, just hearing the name Columbia reminded me of my accident. I didn't want to go there, and I didn't like being in New York City.
Mm.
I loved being back at Cornell. And see, I think most people would say I just wasn't accepting my injury, and I
Mm.
wasn't. I
Right.
felt, maybe if I just ignore it, it'll go away. So
Mm.
I thought if I just try resuming everything I did before my injury, at some point it'll work out and I'll be back up in my feet. So 11 days after I was discharged from the hospital, I traveled 250 miles away from my home and family and resumed my studies at Cornell with a personal care attendant that I had met just once before. And
Mm.
that's how I went back to Cornell.
Wow. Wow. So thinking about, you talked about no ramps, no anything like that. How on earth did you get around?
It was torture.
I'm sure.
One of the classes that I took, which met 3 times a week, was in a building that had 16 steps in front of it.
Mm.
And my dorm room was in a building that had 10 steps just to get
Mm.
in. On my first day of classes, I had to be either pulled up or bounced down close to 100 steps
Mm.
just to attend my first day. And I remember lying in bed thinking I must be crazy. What was I thinking about?
Mm.
Going back to school so far away from home and my family at a school that was so inaccessible. And I remember thinking, I didn't even pay attention to what the professors were lecturing about.
Mm.
I just was worried about going up and down those steps. And I was thinking, I must be crazy. Well, what else am I going to do?
Right.
I had no plan B. I figured I just have to make this work because there was no alternative in my mind.
Mm. It's so interesting because you had to have somebody
Mhm.
helping you navigate all
Every
these
step
things.
of the way. and that included feeding me as well.
Mhm.
And in the hospital, I learned with some special braces and splints that I could actually feed myself a little bit with a great deal of difficulty
Right.
if everything was set up just right and it supported my arm, and I had these splints with a long fork on a swivel. And if I really worked hard and concentrated, I could get a little bit of food in my mouth.
Mhm.
And I remember having my attendant bring me to the cafeteria, which was right across the hall from my room, but it was up 4 steps.
Mm.
And he set me up with my splits. And I remember trying to feed myself, and I really had to concentrate to get any food in my mouth. And at one point, I looked up, and everyone in the cafeteria was staring at me.
Oh,
See, for I don't mean just a few people. I
everyone.
Everyone was staring at me, and I became so uncomfortable. I ate the rest of my meals in my room that year. I n Wherever I went on campus, I was being stared at. They were not used to seeing somebody in my condition,
Mhm.
one at campus, at school, but anywhere for that matter.
Right.
You didn't see people out in public who
Mm-mm.
not only needed to use a wheelchair, but didn't have the use of their arms.
Right.
Again, most facilities were not accessible. I certainly couldn't use the electric wheelchair up there,
Right.
because you couldn't go up down curbs or steps. If I went to a restaurant, I needed somebody to feed me. People were not used to seeing an adult, a
Right.
20-year-old being fed. You
Right.
saw little babies being fed.
Mm.
Wherever I went, I was being stared at, and it was so uncomfortable.
Wow.
And I actually had received some publicity for my injury because it was such an unusual injury, a Cornell student, getting such a devastating injury. And I guess partly as a result of publicity, people were staring at me even more.
Mm.
But, if you've just read about somebody in a newspaper, you tend to look at them when you see them.
In
So
person.
between the publicity and being the only quadriplegic, outside it in campus, wherever I went, I was stared at. And I would have described myself before my injury as an introvert. I
Mhm.
never liked drawing attention to myself. And while I had been in a fraternity and played, sports, I was still very quiet. And these big lectures, I'd sit in the very last row,
Mm.
never raise my hand in class, hope nobody noticed me. And suddenly, wherever I went, I'm being stared at. It
Mm.
was so uncomfortable.
Yeah. Had to be. Well, you told me earlier that today is your 100th episode of being interviewed on podcast, and thank you
Right.
for giving me that honor. Really appreciate
Well,
you.
thank you for having me as your guest. But
Yes.
it's been very strange, I was really surprised following my injury that I started being asked to speak in front of groups.
Mhm.
And it really surprised me. I didn't think I mean, I knew I'd gotten some publicity, but I didn't think anybody really knew who I was or wanted to hear from me. And my first year back at school, near the end of the year, I got a call from the principal of Dryden High School, which is a high school in upstate New York, who said the senior class voted that they wanted to have me as their graduation speaker.
Wow.
And I was just shocked. I mean, I couldn't believe, one, they knew who I was, and two, that they wanted me to speak.
Mm.
And I was just so shocked that I said, okay, without really thinking about it. And suddenly, I have this talk coming up. And that same year, um, I was asked to speak at Ithaca College
Mm.
in front of their physical therapy department, their students. And it was like, again, I wasn't, somebody asked you to do something. I said, okay.
Right.
And suddenly I'm before a lot of, 100 students there. And this graduation was packed with probably close to 1,000 people because
Mm.
not only had graduates, it had parents and
Right.
grandparents. And suddenly I'm in front of everybody, expected to give a talk.
Mm.
And these talks just kept coming. I was later asked to speak in front of a group at Cornell Medical School, and then other high school graduations, and before groups and organizations. And I was still always shocked that they wanted me to talk.
Mm.
And I was even more shocked that words came out of my mouth. I could do that. but I never enjoyed doing it. And I still never enjoyed being in front of a group. I mean, speaking here at a podcast, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share my story now because I want to encourage others
Right.
to realize there's a lot somebody with a disability could do,
Mhm.
and to encourage employers, people to hire people with disabilities because there's a lot they could do. Just to tell your listeners a little bit more about me, I graduated from Cornell with a degree in engineering. I was the first quadriplegic to ever graduate from Cornell. But I stayed at Cornell and I changed my career goal based on the recommendation of a psychology professor where I'd taken an elective in psychology. He encouraged me to go on to a career in counseling where he felt I could help others.
Mm.
So I stayed at Cornell. I got a master's degree at Cornell in counseling. And then to increase my counseling credentials, I went to Columbia University.
Finally, you went to Columbia.
Right. And I earned a second master's degree. And I started to look for a job as a rehabilitation counselor, and no one would hire me.
Mm.
See, for here I had 3 Ivy League degrees,
Wow.
2 master's degrees, and no one would hire me.
Wow.
I was even turned down when I offered to volunteer my services. See,
No way.
imagine what that was
Oh
like.
my goodness.
I had worked so hard to try and rehabilitate myself and make something of my life, and I couldn't even get a job as a volunteer.
Mm.
And after looking for a job for a year and mailing out more than 200 resumes, I finally found one organization willing to give me that opportunity. And that was Abilities Incorporated, which is now part of what's called the Viscardi Center, named after its founder, Dr. Henry Viscardi Jr. And they're located in Albertson here on Long Island.
Wow. Wow. Incredible.
Mhm.
I know we're getting close to in 9 minutes or so. We're ending the podcast, but there's so much I still want to know from you. Talk to me about you became a assistant district attorney. You have no ambition, my friend. Zero ambition. What's going on here?
You know, while I was at the Viscardi Center, they had me doing a lot of public speaking. They kept sending me before groups and organizations talking about topics like non-discrimination and affirmative action in terms of people with disabilities. And after my talks, I would often be asked questions. And while I would do my best to respond appropriately, I was always careful to caution the questioners they should really speak with a lawyer about their concerns. And I guess it didn't take long before I started to think, there's no reason why I couldn't become that lawyer. And here my older brother, Steve, was working as a lawyer at the time. And I decided maybe that would be the right field for me. So I left my job as a rehab counselor, which I loved, by the way. I really liked working there. And I decided to go to law school. So I went to Hofstra University School of Law. I really enjoyed the study of law. And I was so fortunate that I did an internship at the Nassau County District Attorney's Office after my second year of law school. And I loved it. I loved the experience. I loved the people that were working there. And I decided to apply for a full-time job with them when I graduated. And I did. And I was fortunate the district attorney at the time, a fellow by the name of Dennis Dillon, was a very progressive, forward-thinking district attorney who based his hiring decision on my abilities rather than my disability. And despite the fact that he had hundreds of applicants, I was the first law student he hired that year. And I thought that took a lot of guts. I mean, I didn't know of any other assistant district attorneys who were quadriplegics on Long Island.
Right.
I believe I was the first. I didn't know of any other trial attorneys on Long Island who were quadriplegics. I believe I was the first. So he hired me. And here I completed 3 years of law school in the standard 3-year time period. I passed a very difficult New York State bar exam the first time that I took it.
Wow.
I began my work by going through a very intensive 4-week training program where they taught us all aspects of trial techniques from a prosecutor's perspective. And I was so excited and proud to go to court my first day, and I couldn't fit through the swinging doorways in the courtroom.
No way.
They were too narrow to allow me to get through.
Oh my goodness.
That's how I started my job.
So then they had to change things, didn't they, because of you?
Right. This was again well before the Americans with Disabilities Act. They had
Mm.
to take off the swinging doors and widen the doorways for me, and they did that.
See, you make change everywhere you go. I love it.
Mhm.
And you know, one of the things that I see people and they say, oh, they're disabled. I'm like, are they? You're not. You're not. I don't see you as a disabled human being. I see you as a brilliant individual who
Thank
has
you.
helped people progress through their limited thinking, if you will. Um, so I want to get to your support. You talk about family, you talk about everybody else, but you also, where nobody believed it could happen, you have triplets, right?
That's right. I've been so blessed. Sifu, I was fortunate that, I always need attendants to live with me and help me. And I never thought I would ever get married, let
Mm,
alone become a father. But one of the aides that I hired was a female that one was very strong and tall and able to lift me from the bed to the wheelchair. Her name is Anna, and she was helping me on weekends. And the more I got to know Anna, the more not only did I like her and fall in love with her, but our relationship kept growing and growing
mm.
until it became a romantic relationship. And
Woohoo.
again, I never thought I would get married ever, ever, ever. And she actually proposed to me.
Wow, congratulations, Anna. You go, girl.
Yeah. So there she is.
Yes.
So Anna proposed to me, and I had the good sense to say yes. But when we talked about getting married, Anna told me that she wanted to have my baby, and not just a baby, my baby. Now, this seemed impossible.
Oof,
She said she
yeah,
wanted to see a little Kunken running around our home. Well, here I
cool.
had been paralyzed more than 30 years. I was,
Wow. Oh, you
but
cut
she
out for
said
a
she wanted to
second.
have my baby. So we looked into various options, including in vitro fertilization, and we're very excited to learn it still might be possible for
Mm,
someone in my condition to father a child. So we pursued it, and through the grace of God, Anna became pregnant. And
wow.
Sifu, think about this. I was present in the delivery room.
Oh my goodness.
Visualize this.
What a
I'm
blessing.
January 24th, 2005. I am present in the delivery room
Wow.
when my wife Anna gives birth to triplets.
Wow.
Triplets. We have three beautiful sons,
Mm,
Joey, Jimmy, and Timmy. They're now 20 years old. They're juniors at three separate colleges in upstate New York and doing great.
wow. Well, congratulations to both you and Anna
Thank you.
for, triplets in different schools too.
Three different schools. They did everything in life together until they went off to college. They decided on what schools they wanted to apply to. And now one is at State University of New York at Morrisville studying renewable energy. One is at Syracuse studying communications, wants to be a journalist. And one is at my alma mater, Cornell University,
Mm,
studying mechanical engineering. And they're
wow.
all doing great.
Love it. Love it. What an incredible persistent life you've had. And the reason I say persistent is because you did not give up like those gentlemen that you were in that room with, where they were just watching TV. You said, there's got to be more to
Well,
life.
Cifro, I just have to add, I had so much support and encouragement
Of
from
course.
my family and friends that it got to the point where I felt I'd be letting them down.
Mm,
I didn't do everything I could do to make something of my life. They helped me stay motivated.
yeah.
I owe it all to them.
Mhm. Well, also, absolutely, without them, you wouldn't be able to do the functioning things that you're able to do. But it had to be the will in you, the will to be, to do, to become someone who inspires so many. We had, somebody who said your cousin is so thrilled about you that you are their hero.
Well,
You're my hero. You
Thank
know, and I feel like I do nothing compared to what you've accomplished.
you.
So
No,
I have so much to do.
we all face challenges in our
We do.
lives, but what I found is how you handle those challenges
Mhm.
that make all the difference. And I had a lot of help handling those challenges, but with that help, I've been able to reach the position I'm at now, where I am very happy. Sifu, I'm leading a very happy life, and I owe that to my support system. My family and friends made it possible.
I know we're wrapping up, but also you wrote this incredible, it's not a thin book. It's a nice thick book. It's got so many great, your life is in it, right? So like within the last minute, and then I know you have to go, but let's consider what made you decide. I dream of things that never were, the Ken Kunken story, right? Things that never were.
Let me tell
You
you
made
about
them happen.
yeah, let me tell you about how I came up with that title. Soon after I was hurt, just 6 months after I was hurt, I was asked to testify before a United States Health Subcommittee chaired by Senator Edward Kennedy. He asked both my father and I to testify, and we did. We testified before this Senate Health Subcommittee. And 8 days after my testimony, Senator Kennedy sent me a glass paperweight in the mail that had an inscription on it that the senator said the quotation was something his late brother Robert Kennedy liked to say. And it was the words on that inscription that
Mm.
really meant a lot to me. The inscription read, "Some men see things as they are and say why. I dream of things that never were and
Mm.
say why not." And that's where I got the title of my book, I Dream of Things That Never Were, the Ken Kunken story.
Do me a favor, everybody. Pick up the book. It's an incredible book. Ken, you're a blessing, my friend. I can't wait till I come out and you live now in Rockville Center?
I live in Rockville Center, the next town, Oceanside, where I grew
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah. So
Right.
I can't wait. We got to make some plans. I'm going to come out and share, break some bread with you and
That
Anna.
would be great.
I'm
We would love
excited for that. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Everybody, do me a favor, share this episode with somebody who needs to hear this message, because when we have somebody in front of us who is complaining, no, Ken never complained. He just found a way. So find a way to help others, just like Ken has. Your life is worth living. Ken, thank you for sharing you with us. You are a blessing, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Sifu. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my story. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah, yeah. And everybody, like I said, share it, and go ahead. This is his Facebook page right here. Go join his Facebook, right? And also, if you want to connect with him on a different level, pick up his book, go to kenkunken.com, and let's do it. Let's I know you're retired, because I know we're about to go, but I also wanted you to come and speak at my event. But you said, it's so much effort to really do it, and you are retired. But you know what? I am I'm gonna tell people about your book, and I'm gonna tell them to make sure that they come read your
Thank you.
story and listen to this episode as well. So thank you, my friend. Have a blessed and beautiful rest of your day. And
You as
Anna,
well.
you keep being you, girl. You're a powerful human being. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. God bless everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.